The cold metal of handcuffs clicked shut around Brigadier General Latricia Carter's wrists, the sound echoing through the quiet suburban street of Alexandria, Virginia. In her 28 years of military service, through combat zones and Pentagon war rooms, she never imagined she'd be detained on American soil for the crime of being black while house hunting. "Ma'am, stop resisting," Officer Richard Stevens commanded, though General Carter stood perfectly still, her Howard University sweatshirt and jeans a far cry from her decorated uniform. "I've told you who I am," she replied, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning through her veins. "I'm Brigadier General Latricia Carter of the United States Army." Officer Justin Ward smirked. "Yeah, and I'm the Secretary of Defense." They couldn't have known that within the hour, the actual Secretary of Defense would be briefed on this very incident. They couldn't have imagined that with one phone call to the Pentagon, their careers would crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. Cops illegally handcuffed black female general. Her Pentagon call instantly ended their careers. Welcome to Timeless Memoir, where we bring you powerful stories of injustice, resilience, and transformation. I'm your host, and today's story will shake you to your core. A stark reminder that no amount of achievement, education, or service to country can fully shield Black Americans from the poison of racial profiling. Before we dive deeper into this shocking incident, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Your support helps us continue sharing these crucial stories that too often go untold. And if you're already part of our community, thank you. Please consider sharing this video with someone who needs to hear it. Have you ever witnessed or experienced racial profiling? That moment when someone is treated with suspicion based solely on the color of their skin? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story matters. As General Carter stood handcuffed on that sidewalk, surrounded by gathering neighbors with their phones raised, she made a decision that would not only change her life, but would send shockwaves through an entire police department. What happens when those who are accustomed to wielding power unchecked suddenly face the consequences of their actions? What happens when the person they've wrongfully detained has direct access to the highest levels of military command? Stay with me as we unravel how a decorated general's humiliation became the catalyst for one of the most dramatic examples of instant accountability in recent memory, and how the aftermath would transform policing in a community forever. This isn't just a story about justice served. It's about what happens when power meets prejudice and the unexpected heroes who emerge when systems of oppression are exposed to the light. Before that fateful morning in Alexandria, Brigadier General Latricia Carter had built a life defined by excellence and broken barriers. At 52, she stood as one of the highest-ranking black women in the United States Army, a position earned through relentless determination and exceptional leadership. Carter's military journey began at West Point, where she graduated in the top 5% of her class. Her combat experience included 2 tours in Afghanistan, where she earned a Bronze Star for leadership under fire when her intelligence unit was ambushed outside Kandahar. Soldiers who served under her spoke of her tactical brilliance and unwavering composure in crisis, traits that would serve her well during her confrontation with Alexandria police. At the Pentagon, Carter headed a classified cybersecurity initiative, protecting America's military infrastructure from increasingly sophisticated foreign threats. Her security clearance was among the highest possible, granting her access to information that most cabinet members couldn't see. President after president had commended her service. 4-star generals sought her counsel. Behind the uniform, Latricia was a woman finally ready to put down roots. After decades of military housing and temporary apartments, she had decided to purchase her first home. Alexandria's proximity to the Pentagon made it ideal, and she had spent weeks researching neighborhoods, school districts, and property values. Though she had no children, she believed in investing wisely. This particular Saturday morning, she had scheduled viewings with her realtor, but arrived early to walk the streets and get a feel for the community. What General Carter couldn't have known was that her presence would trigger a chain of events set in motion by officers Richard Stevens and Justin Ward. Stevens, 42, was a 15-year veteran of the Alexandria Police Department with a personnel file that told 2 stories. The official commendations spoke of dedication and thoroughness. The buried complaints, 3 for excessive force against minority suspects and 5 for discourteous conduct, painted a darker picture. All had been dismissed after cursory internal reviews. His colleagues described him as by the book, though which book remained unspecified. Divorced twice, Stevens lived alone and viewed his police work as a mission to maintain order in a world he increasingly saw as chaotic. Justin Ward, 29, had joined the force just 3 years earlier after a brief stint in retail management. Raised in the predominantly white suburb of McLean, Virginia, Ward had limited interactions with people of color before joining the force. He saw Stevens as a mentor and adopted his senior partner's attitudes and approaches without question. Ward's performance reviews noted his eagerness to plead and strong adherence to chain of command, qualities that would prove devastating when paired with Stevens' prejudices. The call that brought them to Kingsgate neighborhood came from Kyle Smith, a 61-year-old retired insurance executive who had lived there for 20 years. Smith prided himself on keeping an eye out for the neighborhood, which in practice meant scrutinizing anyone he deemed out of place. His call to police described Carter as a black woman in casual clothes looking at houses and taking pictures who doesn't look like she belongs here. The dispatcher logged it as a suspicious person report, though nothing in Carter's behavior warranted suspicion. Jeffrey Eggert, a 45-year-old software engineer who lived across the street, would become an unexpected witness. Unlike Smith, Eggert had moved to Alexandria from Devers, Brooklyn, 5 years earlier, and found the neighborhood's homogeneity unsettling. When he saw the officers confronting Carter, something in their body language, the aggressive stance, the hands hovering near weapons, prompted him to reach for his phone and start recording. Back at the Pentagon, Major General Valeria Orth was reviewing weekend security protocols when her phone rang. As Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, Orth had worked closely with Carter for 7 years. Their relationship transcended professional respect. They were confidants who had navigated the challenges of being women in the highest echelons of military leadership. Orth's husband, coincidentally, lived just 3 streets over from where Carter was being detained. Adam Bennett, General Ord's executive assistant, would be the first to receive the call from Alexandria Police. At 34, the former Army captain had transitioned to civilian service after 2 tours in Iraq. His efficiency and discretion had made him indispensable to Pentagon leadership. When Officer Ward's call came through, Bennett's military training in crisis management would prove crucial in the rapid response that followed. These were the players in a drama about to unfold. A collision of worlds where military precision would meet police prejudice, with consequences none could fully anticipate. Kyle Smith peered through his living room blinds, coffee mug in hand, watching the black woman in jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt as she slowly walked the street, stopping occasionally to take photos with her smartphone. Something about her presence disturbed his Saturday morning routine. In 20 years, he'd come to know everyone in Kingsgate, or at least everyone he thought should be there. Alexandria Police Department, what's your emergency? The dispatcher answered when Smith called. There's a suspicious person in our neighborhood, Smith reported, his voice lowered as though the woman might hear him through walls and windows. A black woman taking pictures of houses. She's been walking up and down Kingsgate Drive for the past 15 minutes. Is she attempting to enter any properties, sir? No, but she's taking photos. Could be casing houses for a break-in. She doesn't look like she belongs here. The dispatcher's voice remained neutral. We'll send an officer to check it out. What the dispatcher logged was simply suspicious person reported in Kingsgate neighborhood, not mentioning race, though Smith had emphasized it twice more before ending the call. 10 minutes later, Officers Stevens and Ward arrived in their patrol car, immediately spotting General Carter standing on the sidewalk, her phone raised to capture the colonial architecture of a home with a for sale sign prominently displayed in the manicured front yard. Stevens parked the cruiser and nodded to Ward. Let's see what we've got here. They approached from different angles, a tactic designed to limit escape options. Carter, absorbed in comparing the property to her checklist of desired features, didn't notice them until Stevens spoke. Ma'am, can we have a word with you? His hand rested casually on his holstered weapon, a habitual stance he adopted particularly with minority subjects. Carter lowered her phone, turning to face them with the composed expression of someone accustomed to command. "Of course, officer. Is there a problem?" "We received a call about someone taking pictures of homes in this area," Stevens said, his eyes conducting a rapid assessment. No visible bulges suggesting weapons, but her shoulder bag was large enough to conceal something. "May I ask what you're doing here?" "I'm house hunting," Carter replied evenly. "I have an appointment with a realtor at 11. I came early to get a feel for the neighborhood and take some preliminary photos of properties I'm interested in." Stevens and Ward exchanged glances. A silent communication developed over months of partnership. "I'll need to see some identification," Stevens demanded, his tone hardening slightly. Carter nodded. "My ID is in my purse." She moved her hand toward her shoulder bag. "Stop," Ward shouted, his hand flying to his weapon. "Keep your hands where we can see them." Carter froze, her military training kicking in, assess the threat, calculate options, minimize risk. "Officer, I'm just reaching for my identification as requested." "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Stevens ordered, stepping closer. "Excuse me?" Carter's voice remained steady, but her heart began to race. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm simply looking at houses in a neighborhood where I'm considering purchasing a home." "Ma'am, we can do this the easy way or the hard way," Stevens said, unclipping his handcuffs. "Turn around now." Carter stood her ground, shoulders square, the posture of someone who had faced far more dangerous situations. "Officers, I am Brigadier General Latricia Carter of the United States Army. I work at the Pentagon. If you'll allow me to show you my military ID..." "Yeah, then I'm the Secretary of Defense," Stevens scoffed. "Turn around now." In that moment, Carter made a calculation. As a black woman in America, she knew the potential consequences of non-compliance. As a military officer, she understood chain of command and protocol. As a strategist, she recognized when to concede a battle to win the war. She turned around. The cold metal of handcuffs bit into her wrists as Stevens secured them tightly. Too tightly. Carter winced but remained silent. "We've had reports of burglaries in this area," Ward explained, though no such reports existed. "We're just doing our job." From his front porch, Kyle Smith watched with satisfaction, arms crossed over his chest. The neighborhood was being protected. Order was being maintained. Across the street, Jeffrey Eggert had stepped outside to retrieve his newspaper when he noticed the confrontation. Something about the scene, a black woman in handcuffs, two white officers, no visible struggle, triggered his conscience. He pulled out his phone and began recording. "What's going on?" Eggert called out, approaching cautiously. "Just handling a suspicious person, sir," Ward replied. "Nothing to worry about." Carter looked Eggert in the eye. "Sir, I'm a U.S. Army general. These officers are making a mistake. Could you please continue recording this interaction?" Eggert nodded, his phone steady now. "Sir, please return to your home," Stevens ordered. "This is police business." "I have a right to observe," Eggert replied, standing his ground. "I'm not interfering." By now, other neighbors had emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Abernathy from 2 doors down, the Johnsons from across the street. A jogger had stopped, removing his earbuds to watch. "Officers," Carter said, her voice taking on the commanding tone that had directed military operations, "you are making a serious error. I demand you check my identification immediately." Stevens sighed dramatically. "Fine. Where's your ID?" "In my purse, left side pocket," Carter replied. "There's a military ID and a driver's license." Ward retrieved her purse and located the ID, handing it to Stevens. The military identification card was unmistakable, Department of Defense issued with holographic security features. Carter's photograph in uniform and her rank clearly stated, Brigadier General. Stevens examined it, his expression unchanged. "This could be fake," he muttered, though the security features clearly indicated otherwise. "That is a federal government-issued identification," Carter stated. "Falsifying such documents is a federal offense. Do you genuinely believe I would commit a felony to avoid a conversation with local police? The logic was impeccable, but Stevens had committed too fully to back down now. We still need to verify your identity. Anyone can get a fake ID these days. Call the Pentagon, Carter suggested, her strategy shifting. Ask for General Valeria Orth, Deputy Chief of Staff. Her direct line is on the back of my business card, also in my purse. Ward found the card, embossed with the Department of Defense seal, Carter's name and rank, and a direct Pentagon extension. He looked at Stevens, uncertainty creeping into his expression for the first time. Make the call, Stevens ordered, unwilling to be the one to potentially speak with Pentagon brass. As Ward dialed, the crowd of neighbors grew. Phones were raised, recording the scene from multiple angles. Kyle Smith had retreated inside, suddenly less certain about his report. Carter stood in handcuffs, her wrists beginning to bruise, but her posture remained military straight. In her mind, she was calculating the chain of events that would follow, the reports that would be filed, the calls that would be made, the consequences that would unfold. 28 years of military strategic thinking had prepared her for this moment, though she had never imagined needing those skills on a quiet suburban street in Virginia. The phone call that Ward was about to make would change everything, not just for the officers, but for policing in Alexandria and beyond. As the line connected to the Pentagon, the balance of power was about to shift dramatically. General Carter's suggestion to call the Pentagon wasn't merely a desperate plea. It was a calculated move from a woman who had spent decades in military strategic operations. She knew that verification of her identity would come swiftly, and with it a seismic shift in the power dynamic currently restraining her wrists. Officer Ward held the business card between trembling fingers, the Pentagon's direct line embossed in official government typeface. He glanced at Stevens, seeking reassurance, but found only stubborn determination. Make the call, Stevens ordered again, his voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. Ward dialed the number on his department-issued phone, putting it on speaker, a decision he would later regret, as it allowed the growing crowd of neighbors to hear every word of what followed. After 2 rings, a crisp, professional voice answered. Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff, this is Adam Bennett speaking. Ward cleared his throat. This is Officer Justin Ward of the Alexandria Police Department. I need to verify the identity of someone claiming to be Brigadier General Latricia Carter. A brief pause followed. May I ask why you're inquiring about General Carter's identity? Bennett's tone had shifted subtly, the practiced neutrality now tinged with alert concern. We have detained a woman claiming to be General Carter on suspicion of suspicious activity in a residential neighborhood, Ward explained, his confidence wavering as he spoke the words aloud. Detained. Bennett's voice sharpened. Could you clarify what you mean by detained, Officer Ward? Stevens leaned toward the phone. This is Officer Stevens. The subject is currently handcuffed while we verify her identity. Standard procedure for suspicious persons. The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt eternal to everyone present. Please hold while I connect you with General Orth immediately, Bennett finally responded, his voice now clipped and formal. In the Pentagon's secure wing, Adam Bennett's fingers flew across his keyboard, simultaneously connecting the call to General Orth while sending an urgent message to security protocols. Alert. B.G. Carter reportedly detained by local police in Alexandria, verifying now, potential security situation. 30 seconds later, Major General Valeria Orth's authoritative voice filled the line. This is General Valeria Orth? Who am I speaking with, and why are you inquiring about General Carter? Ward swallowed hard. Ma'am, this is Officer Justin Ward of the Alexandria Police Department. We have detained a woman claiming to be General Carter on suspicion of— Detained, Orth interrupted, her voice like steel. What exactly do you mean by detained? She's in handcuffs, ma'am, Ward admitted, his confidence now completely evaporated. We received a call about a suspicious person. Put General Carter on the phone immediately, Orth demanded. Ward held the phone to Carter's ear, his hand visibly trembling. Val, it's Latricia. Carter said calmly, using her colleague's first name, a detail that wasn't lost on the officers. "I'm being detained while house hunting in Alexandria. Officers Stevens and Ward have me in handcuffs on the sidewalk in Kingsgate neighborhood." The silence on the other end was brief, but deafening. "Are you injured?" Orth asked, her tone now controlled but with an undercurrent of fury. "Negative. Just humiliated," Carter replied, military brevity taking over. Put the officer back on. Ward took the phone, his face now ashen. "Officer Ward." Orth's voice was ice-cold. "You and your partner have approximately 3 minutes to remove those handcuffs from a decorated brigadier general who has command authority over classified military operations. In 4 minutes, I will be speaking with your chief of police. In 5 minutes, the Secretary of the Army will be informed. In 10 minutes, this will reach the Secretary of Defense. Am I making myself clear?" "Yes, ma'am," Ward stammered. "An officer?" "This call is being recorded for national security purposes. We take the harassment of our senior military leadership extremely seriously." The call ended. Ward looked at Stevens, whose face had drained of color. "Uncuff her," Stevens muttered. "Now." The key fumbled in Stevens' suddenly clumsy fingers as he moved to unlock the handcuffs. The metal bracelets fell away, revealing angry red marks where they had dug into Carter's wrists. She brought her hands forward slowly, rubbing the irritated skin. The power shift was palpable. Where moments before stood a suspicious person, now stood a brigadier general whose authority was recognized at the highest levels of government. The neighbors who had gathered sensed it too, phones still recording, murmurs spreading through the small crowd. "General Carter," Stevens began, his voice strained. "There appears to have been a misunderstanding." "Save it," Carter interrupted, her voice level but with unmistakable authority. "What's your badge number, Officer Stevens?" Stevens provided it reluctantly. "And yours, Officer Ward?" Ward complied immediately. Carter committed both to memory, then turned to address Jeffrey Eggert, who was still recording. "Sir, would you be willing to share that video with me? I'll need it for the report I'll be filing." "Absolutely," Eggert nodded. "I caught everything from when they first approached you." Carter's phone began to ring. The caller ID displayed Pentagon secure line. "This is General Carter," she answered. "General, this is Adam Bennett. General Orth has informed the Chief of Police, who is en route to your location now. The Secretary of the Army has been briefed and requests you call him directly once you're clear of the situation. Do you require medical attention for your wrists?" "Negative on medical, but thank you, Adam. Please inform General Orth I'll call her within the hour with a full report." As she ended the call, Carter noticed the stark contrast in the officers' demeanors. Stevens stood rigid, jaw clenched, eyes burning with a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. His body language screamed resentment, a man unaccustomed to having his authority challenged, especially by a black woman. Ward, however, looked shell-shocked. The rookie officer's face had lost all color, his eyes wide with the dawning realization of what had just happened and what it meant for his career. His gaze kept returning to Carter's wrists, where the marks from his handcuffs were darkening to bruises. "Officers," Carter said, her voice now carrying the full weight of her rank, "I suggest you contact your union representatives immediately. You're going to need them." Within minutes, the wail of approaching sirens filled the air. Not one, but 3 police vehicles were speeding toward Kingsgate Drive, including the Chief of Police's unmarked car. The neighborhood had never seen such a response, not even for actual emergencies. As Carter waited, she stood perfectly still, her military bearing intact despite the ordeal. She had faced enemy fire in Afghanistan with the same composure she now displayed on this suburban street. The difference was that in combat she had expected the danger. Here, in her own country, on a peaceful Saturday morning, she had been treated as the enemy, and that cut deeper than any physical restraint. The Alexandria Police Department's convoy arrived with lights flashing but sirens now silent. A belated attempt at discretion that came far too late. Chief Marcus Johnson, a 25-year veteran and the department's first black chief, emerged from his vehicle with the grave expression of a man who understood exactly how catastrophic the situation was. Behind him came Deputy Chief Rivera and Captain Michaels from Internal Affairs. A response team assembled in the 17 minutes since General Orth's call had reached the chief's office during his Saturday golf game. Chief Johnson approached Carter directly, ignoring the officers who stood awkwardly nearby. "General Carter, I'm Chief Marcus Johnson. On behalf of the Alexandria Police Department, I want to express my deepest apologies for this inexcusable incident." Carter acknowledged him with a slight nod. "Chief Johnson, I appreciate your prompt response. I trust you understand. This isn't just about me." "I do, General," Johnson replied, his gaze briefly dropping to the marks on her wrists. "This incident will be thoroughly investigated, and appropriate action will be taken. I expect nothing less," Carter said. "And I'll be following up personally." Johnson turned to Stevens and Ward, his expression hardening. "Officers, surrender your badges and service weapons immediately. You are both suspended pending investigation." "Chief, with all due respect," Stevens began. "That wasn't a request, Officer Stevens." Johnson cut him off. "Badges and weapons now." The public surrender of their symbols of authority, witnessed by the growing crowd of neighbors and captured on multiple phones, was unprecedented. Stevens removed his badge and gun with barely contained fury, while Ward complied with the mechanical movements of a man in shock. As Internal Affairs officers escorted Stevens and Ward to separate vehicles, Jeffrey Eggert approached Carter. "General, I've already uploaded the video to my cloud account. I'm sending you the link now." "Thank you, Mr. Eggert," Carter replied. "Your decision to record may prove more important than you realize." What none of them knew in that moment was that Eggert's wife had already shared the video to her social media accounts with the caption, "Black female general handcuffed in our neighborhood for house hunting while black." This happened 30 minutes ago. Share widely. By nightfall, the video would accumulate over 5 million views. By morning, it would reach 20 million and be featured on every major news network. Back at the Pentagon, an emergency meeting had convened in a secure conference room. Present were General Orth, the Secretary of the Army, the Judge Advocate General, and representatives from the Department of Defense Public Affairs Office. On a secure video link was the Secretary of Defense, who had been briefed while attending a NATO conference in Brussels. This incident represents not just an affront to General Carter personally, but an attack on the dignity of the uniform and the chain of command, the Secretary of the Army stated. "We will provide General Carter with every resource at our disposal, including legal counsel from the Judge Advocate General's office, if she wishes to pursue civil action." General Orth, who had known Carter for over a decade, spoke next. "Latricia, General Carter won't want this to be solely about her. She'll want systemic change. Then we'll support that too," the Secretary of Defense said from the video screen. "The President has been briefed and is monitoring the situation. He's made it clear that the full weight of the executive branch is behind General Carter." As the video spread across social media platforms, public reaction was swift and overwhelming. "Respect the General" and "Black in Uniform" became trending hashtags. Military veterans of all races shared stories of being racially profiled in civilian clothes. Black service members posted photos of themselves in uniform alongside photos in civilian attire with captions like, "Same person, different treatment." News vans began arriving in Kingsgate neighborhood by early evening. National correspondents delivered live reports with the now infamous street corner in the background. "Behind me is where Brigadier General Latricia Carter was handcuffed today for what many are calling house hunting while black," one reporter began her segment. Kyle Smith, the neighbor who had made the initial call, refused all interview requests and kept his blinds drawn. Anonymous sources would later reveal to reporters that his employer, a government contractor, had placed him on administrative leave, pending an investigation into whether his actions violated the company's anti-discrimination policies. The internal investigation moved with unprecedented speed. Body camera footage from both officers was secured immediately. The dispatch recordings were pulled. Witness statements were taken from everyone present, including Jeffrey Eggert and other neighbors. What the investigation revealed was damning. The dispatcher had never characterized Carter as suspicious in the call to the officers. The body camera footage showed Stevens referring to Carter as another entitled one before even approaching her. Most damning was the discovery that Stevens had a history of targeting black residents in predominantly white neighborhoods, with a pattern of escalating routine encounters while adopting a more lenient approach with white citizens. Ward's record was less problematic, but the investigation uncovered text messages between him and Stevens that contained racial slurs and derogatory comments about the communities they policed. 5 days after the incident, both officers were terminated from the Alexandria Police Department. The official statement cited gross misconduct, violation of departmental policies regarding bias-free policing, and conduct unbecoming of an officer. Their paths diverged dramatically in the aftermath. Stevens, unrepentant, gave interviews to right-wing media outlets, claiming he was a victim of reverse racism and political correctness. He filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, which was quickly dismissed by a judge who cited the overwhelming evidence against him. He became a minor celebrity in certain circles, speaking at rallies about the persecution of police officers. Ward took a different path. Through his union representative, he reached out to Carter's office at the Pentagon requesting a private meeting. His written statement expressed profound remorse and a desire to understand how and why he had failed so completely in his duty. Initially reluctant, Carter eventually agreed to meet him, a decision that would prove transformative for both. As the first week after the incident came to a close, General Carter held a press conference, not as a victim seeking justice, but as a leader proposing solutions. Standing at the podium in her full-dress uniform, medals gleaming under the lights, she addressed the nation with the same composure she had shown on that suburban sidewalk. "What happened to me was not unique," she began. "The only unique aspect was the response. Most Black Americans who are wrongfully detained don't have the Pentagon on speed dial," General Carter continued, her voice steady as cameras flashed. "They don't have generals vouching for their character. They don't have the privilege of immediate accountability." The press conference marked the beginning, not the end, of Carter's response to her detention. Rather than retreating from public view or seeking personal compensation, she leveraged the national attention to launch the Equitable Policing Initiative, a comprehensive program designed to transform law enforcement training and accountability nationwide. The military has learned, sometimes the hard way, that diversity is not just a moral imperative, it's a strategic advantage, Carter explained to a packed room of journalists. Our police forces must learn the same lesson. The initiative would partner the Department of Defense with civilian law enforcement agencies to implement military-grade training protocols in de-escalation, bias recognition, and community engagement. Within days, funding commitments poured in. The Pentagon allocated resources, Congress approved emergency appropriations, and private corporations pledged millions. Civil rights organizations that had spent decades fighting for police reform found themselves with an unexpected ally in Carter, someone whose military credentials made her criticism of law enforcement impossible to dismiss as anti-police. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the American Civil Liberties Union joined forces with Carter's initiative, bringing their legal expertise and community connections to the table. 3 months after the handcuffing incident, Carter stood beside a bipartisan group of senators as they introduced the Law Enforcement Accountability and Professional Standards Act, quickly dubbed the Carter Act by the media. The legislation would establish civilian oversight boards with real power to discipline officers and mandate departmental changes, create a national database of police misconduct, and tie federal funding to compliance with new training standards. "This isn't about punishing police," Carter testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee. "It's about protecting both citizens and officers by ensuring that law enforcement operates with the same level of professionalism, accountability, and strategic precision that we demand from our military." The bill faced initial resistance from police unions and conservative lawmakers, But Carter's approach was masterful. She invited critics to Pentagon training facilities, showing them firsthand how military protocols could enhance rather than hinder law enforcement effectiveness. She emphasized that accountability protected good officers from being tainted by the actions of those who abused their authority. 6 months after being handcuffed on a quiet Alexandria street, General Latricia Carter stood in the Rose Garden as the president signed the Carter Act into law, the most significant police reform legislation in decades. "This moment isn't about me," Carter said at the signing ceremony. "It's about creating a future where no one is judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. A future where law enforcement protects and serves all communities with equal dedication and respect." The personal journeys of those involved in the incident took dramatically different paths in the months that followed. Carter purchased a home in Alexandria, not in Kingsgate, but in a diverse neighborhood where she quickly became a beloved community figure. She established a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing careers in public service and national security. On weekends, she could often be found mentoring young people at the community center or speaking at local schools. Justin Ward's request to meet with Carter had initially been met with skepticism by her staff, but she had insisted on hearing him out. In a private conference room at the Pentagon, Ward sat across from the woman he had humiliated. "General Carter," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I know sorry isn't enough. What I did was inexcusable." "Then why did you do it?" Carter asked simply. Ward's answer was honest, if uncomfortable. "Because that's what I was trained to do. Because Stevens was my superior. Because—" He hesitated. "Because when I saw you, I didn't see a general. I didn't even see a person. I saw a threat." Their conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end, Ward had agreed to participate in the Equitable Policing Initiative as a case study in how bias infiltrates police culture. He enrolled in a criminal justice master's program, focusing on reform and community policing, and began speaking to police academies about his experience. A living example of both failure and redemption. Richard Stevens took a darker path. His wrongful termination lawsuit failed, his police union abandoned him after the body camera footage became public, and his interviews grew increasingly bitter and conspiratorial. He eventually moved to a rural community in another state, where he occasionally appeared at Back the Blue rallies, his story growing more distorted with each telling. Kyle Smith, whose call had initiated the incident, faced his own reckoning. His employer, a government contractor, terminated him after his role became public. Neighbors, who had once welcomed him at community gatherings, now avoided eye contact. He put his house on the market 6 weeks after the incident, selling it at a loss to escape the whispers and stares. Before leaving, he received a certified letter from Carter's attorney informing him that his actions were being reviewed for potential civil rights violations. Jeffrey Eggert, whose video had exposed the truth, became an unlikely activist. His footage had given him a platform, and he used it to advocate for his black neighbors and colleagues. He established a neighborhood watch program focused not on reporting suspicious people, but on building community connections across racial and economic lines. When interviewed about his role, he always deflected credit. "I just did what anyone should do when witnessing injustice." The real hero is General Carter. Perhaps the most powerful symbol of transformation came 1 year after the incident, when the handcuffs that had once bound General Carter's wrists were displayed in a glass case at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The exhibit, titled From Restraint to Reform, featured the handcuffs alongside a timeline of the Carter Act's implementation and early successes. The museum plaque read, "These handcuffs, once instruments of unjust restraint, became catalysts for national change when placed on the wrong person, a decorated military leader who transformed personal humiliation into institutional reform." They remind us that justice often advances not in sweeping movements, but in individual moments of courage and accountability. In her office at the Pentagon, Carter kept a simple, framed quote on her desk. "Power isn't about what you can do. It's about what you do with what you can do. She had turned humiliation into transformation, not just for herself, but for a nation still struggling to live up to its ideals. 2 years after those handcuffs clicked around General Carter's wrists on a quiet Alexandria street, the data told a compelling story. In police departments that had implemented the Equitable Policing Initiative, excessive force complaints had dropped by 47%. Wrongful detentions of minority citizens had decreased by 53%. Community satisfaction with police interactions had risen across all demographic groups. The Carter Act had transformed not just policies and procedures, but the very culture of policing in America. What began as one woman's humiliation had catalyzed a movement that saved lives, restored dignity, and rebuilt trust between communities and those sworn to protect them. Yet the most profound lesson from General Carter's story wasn't about police reform. It was about the responsibility that comes with privilege and position. When Carter stood handcuffed on that sidewalk, she had a choice. She could have used her military rank solely to secure her own freedom and then retreated to the safety of the Pentagon. Instead, she recognized her unique power to create change for those who would never have a general's star to protect them. I often think about what would have happened if those officers had stopped someone without my resources and connections, Carter reflected in a rare interview. That person might still be fighting for justice, might have faced charges for resisting arrest, might have lost faith in the system entirely. My privilege came with an obligation to ensure that the next person wouldn't need to be a general to be treated with basic dignity and respect. Her words remind us that true justice isn't measured by how we treat the powerful, but by how we treat those with no power at all. What would you do if you witnessed someone being racially profiled? Would you have the courage to record it like Jeffrey Eggert did? Would you speak up, even when it's uncomfortable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters in this ongoing conversation. The story of General Letitia Carter teaches us that change often begins with a single moment of injustice, captured, exposed, and transformed. One person's decision to record. One leader's choice to fight not just for herself, but for everyone. One community's commitment to do better. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your engagement helps these important stories reach more people who might never otherwise hear them. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Timeless Memoir for more powerful stories that expose injustice and celebrate resilience. Next week, we'll bring you the remarkable account of a small-town teacher who transformed her school district's approach to racial equity after a shocking incident at a high school prom. Remember, history isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we create together, one choice, one stand, one moment of courage at a time. The handcuffs that once restrained General Carter now rest in a museum, but the work of building a more just society remains in our hands. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Until next time, this is Timeless Memoir, where we believe that sharing our stories is the first step toward changing our future.